Well, first of all, thank you very much for being a participant in this extraordinarily historic event, the Eye on Earth Summit. This particular panel is going to be about how geospatial technologies, which are growing at an exponential rate and are transforming every aspect of human endeavor, are going to be moving into the areas of urban planning, into the idea of buildings and the built environment, and into the area of spatial planning for large metropolitan areas in general around the world. We have a wonderful and extraordinary panel for you today. I'm excited about it. I think that this is going to be a special opportunity to meet leaders in various fields. And the other aspect of it that I'd like to bring to your attention, because one of the products of this summit is going to be a congregation of special initiatives, a declaration for Eye on Earth. And one of the things that I think is going to be really exciting about it is the launch of this concept of resilience. I remember in 1980 hearing the word sustainability, and I knew then that it was going to be one of the great, powerful words that could change the agenda and transform the perspectives on what this world would be about. And now sustainable development has become a watchword everywhere. But the word resilience is a powerful word too, because it basically is the flip side of disasters. And so we're going to hear some talk about, as soon as my panel gets here, we're going to hear some talk about how the pre-event of disasters has a whole series of agenda and resource-driven aspects, and the post-agenda of development, relief, assistance, and how you rebuild stronger, smarter, better. So this resilience concept we hope will spring from the Eye on Earth Summit into the Rio de Janeiro Rio Plus 20 Conference on Sustainable Development and begin to put resilience as a key component on the path to sustainable development, and indeed become one of the driving functions for the next 30 years as we try to build our own future out. So with that, I hope my panel is ready to come on out. I'm certainly ready for them. Yes. And so our first speaker, I'm proud to say, is someone who's been a leader. Mrs. Naima Al-Zournuri has been the planning manager at the Urban Planning Council in the new spatial department, spatial data department, and would like to give some preliminary overview of these perspectives.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. It's my pleasure to talk in this panel about the designing for resilience and change, and to give some overview about Abu Dhabi initiative, a strong initiative in this regard. Abu Dhabi government set its a clear path towards putting a clear strategy how to make Abu Dhabi city sustainable or a role model for Arab capital in the sustainability and istidama, to transform the Emirate into a global model for the sustainability idea. They put a lot of strategies and policies in place to make sure those concepts embedded in their policies and regulation. And that's what I'm trying to elaborate more on this presentation. The foundation of the Vision 2030, which is the iconic vision of Abu Dhabi, is set in 2007. Started with Plan Abu Dhabi Framework 2030 plan and Economic Vision 2030. That to align all the effort and all the strategies to have a clear path of where the city will be in the next 22 years. Of course, our cities are growing, and the significant and rapid growth in the city of Abu Dhabi is showing a clear need of having a clear strategy and policy in place to manage that growth and the economic expansion. As you can see here, in 2008, we have almost less than 1 million residents in Abu Dhabi, and that grows dramatically, prospected in 2013 to be 1.2, and we are expecting in 2030 to have a population of 2.6, almost 2.6 residents, and a significant number of annual tourists could reach 6.5 growth perspective of the tourists. So that's a significant number. We have really, as a city, decision makers to make a clear strategy of how we can manage that growth and take care of the whole environment and the cultural aspects of Abu Dhabi Emirate. There is a clear drivers and objectives that encourage us to come with this 2030 plan. Those drivers are clearly the economic expansions. Economic expansion and the growing population, those are very clear initiatives that, or drivers that makes us to think seriously about how we set up the roadmap for Abu Dhabi, how we can manage all of this expansion in economy and population growth and the real estate market. We have to put a clear directions, and that's what 2030 plan is trying to achieve. The 2030 vision clearly stated that the sustainability is one of Abu Dhabi government strategies and priorities. Unique natural environment, that's what our 2030 vision is talking about. We have to keep the natural environment, the unique natural environment of Abu Dhabi always in a good perspective, and not to lose that with the urban developments happening around the city. The heritage and the excellence and livability of the city. We have to think how to make this city as livable as possible and attractive place to live and work or to visit. Connectivity, of course, that's one of the main principles that our 2030 vision is talking about. How we are trying to do that, there is a lot of approaches, and we research around the world about how other cities have done it. I will tell you the truth, there is very little initiatives that started to think of how to measure sustainability or how to achieve the sustainability. Still, there is a lot of fluidity in terms of how we can achieve the sustainability, or how can rank it, or how can we measure it. And I think from Abu Dhabi Planning Council, we started to think more tangibly how we can measure this. And I will tell you how we are trying to do this. The concept of resilience that we are trying today to discuss in this unique panel is very important. So either it is social or economic or environmental or cultural, it's essential for each city to effectively manage their operation and their plan and their development. And by planning all of this, of course, that will be a good way to start to think about indicators. What are those indicators? What we are trying to achieve? Are we doing well with our regulations and policies in place? Does those regulation and policies needs to be enhanced or tests or something that we need really to do about to make the city is more attractive and more sustainable than anywhere else in the world? So how we can achieve that in terms of measures? The citizens that I'm trying today, just because of the time, there is a lot of ideas that we thought about, and we had a lot of discussion with other initiatives like Barcelona initiative and in Singapore and Paris. And we had a lot of discussion with the people that trying to achieve the measurement of the sustainability. I think Abu Dhabi tried to look into it from two perspectives, from the macro level and the micro level. From the micro level, it was an idea that we started really to implement. It's a great initiative. We started with Istidama per rating system, where it is clearly has reduced a lot of consumption, and the water consumption and energy consumption, and make a big difference in terms of how we are utilizing our resources. That's a new type of thinking that we started in Abu Dhabi, how we try to put some kind of rating system for any development that will start to build in Abu Dhabi. I think we started this just maybe a year ago, but the whole idea will get the result maybe in a few years. We will find a significant change. Right now, from the couple of buildings that we already applied the system, the rating system on, 41% is being reduced from the energy and 21% from the water consumption. And I think that's significant. If Abu Dhabi continue doing this, I think within the next few years, we will have a pretty good result about how Abu Dhabi tangibly measured the sustainability and how they are really managing the city in terms of the development. This is the Executive Council enforcement of the rule of Istidama, which is Istidama is the Arabic name of the sustainability, and it enforces each development in Abu Dhabi to adhere to this rating system. It's one per rating system for each villa, even individual villa, and 2 for the government and community facilities kind of development. Just to have a quick overview why the per rating system. Of course, with this rating system, we started to uphold the cultural sustainability and emphasis on the design. So it emphasis on the design from the beginning. Before it starts building, we need to see how much this building will be consuming, the water and electricity, and what kind of materials is going to be used for building those kind of development. And that's what's good about it, because it starts for approval from the beginning, so you can really reduce a lot of effort and enhance the result of it. There is plenty of result and benefits of Istidama, and I can go through them in the discussion if you like. But I would like just to jump into the main idea of how we are linking this into the geospatial information. In Abu Dhabi, we have plenty of good information, geospatial information related to the location itself. And what we are trying to do in this initiative, which we call City Sense, is mapping data for better decisions. What is City Sense? In its simple form, City Sense is a way to measure how well we are doing, how well are our policies and regulation in terms of planning the city are doing, how much effect on the ground. And we are linking that not on the macro level only, even to the community level. So we are seeing each community having all the geospatial information, trying to identify some indicators that could be applied and monitor them over time and see before the regulation and policies and after these policies, are we improving? Are those having a positive effect on the ground, or we need to enhance something? That's the broad idea of City Sense. But are we ready for such thing? I think if we didn't start it now, things will get worse and worse. And we care about the environment, and we care, it's one of our basic principles that we rely on. And our vision is clearly set the path for having this as a priority for the government. Therefore, we thought we need to feel the pulse of the city. We need to understand how we are doing. So City Sense is a tool that we're trying to provide for decision makers of how our regulations and planning policies are doing over time. Maybe the long term is going to be really a very good example and something we can share with all other cities. But now, at this moment, we started this in a small scale, and we're trying to really grow and have a discussion with other cities to find out are those indicators are suitable for everywhere, because we try to focus on our needs and our environment and how well we are doing according to our Vision 2030. So citizens in general is a way or a platform that allow two-way direction of dialogue. Because if things are not going well, how we will know that? Of course, from the people who live in the city. If I wanted to make Abu Dhabi is a beautiful place to live in, beautiful place to work, a good place to visit or to do business, you need to hear from the people who live on the city. There is different ways we can do that, and we started really to put some effort to identify how the tool, which we were thinking to have it as a web-based, to allow the public and the residents and the people who are visiting Abu Dhabi to tell us how well we are doing. Geospatial information has a great value. It has a great value to make this vision happen. It's somehow complicated, but I think with a clear vision and dedication, I think Abu Dhabi will be able to show a role model on how to measure those indicators and how we're trying to achieve our sustainability istidama. For this, I would like to run this video and hope you like. That will give you an overview about Abu Dhabi and Urban Planning Council. So this is just an introduction of the idea, and I will be happy to answer questions, particular question about the citizens and the approach that we are trying to achieve in Abu Dhabi through the discussion. Thank you.
Wonderful presentation. I would just say it's a demonstration here of why people all over the world now look to Abu Dhabi and the Urban Planning Council here as one of the 5 best in the world, and you just saw the reason for that. But without further ado, let me bring out our fantastic panel today, and if everyone would come out and take their seats. We have a sterling group that I think you'll enjoy hearing, and we'd like to have one more perspective with some slides, but also some interaction. So if everybody could come out for the panel. Take your seats along here. First of all, I'd like to ask each of the panel members to give a very brief introduction of who they are and what their organization is. If we could start here. Jan.
Well, I am a deputy in the state of Rio de Janeiro, but I have been Deputy Minister of Environment in Brazil, and I organized Rio +5, and I was also the person who created the institute, the Sustainable Development Council and the Agenda 21 in Brazil.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Suzanne Seitz, and I'm with EoE, Local Governments for Sustainability. Now, in your program, you'll see the name Konrad Otto Zimmermann, who is our Secretary General. I had his office, and he sent his apologies and was unavailable, unfortunately, to be here at the last minute. EoE is a global association of cities working towards sustainability, including resilience, and I'm sure I'll be talking more about that later.
You've already met Ms. Al-Nouri.
Naima Zaraouni from Abu Dhabi Urban Planning Council. I'm the planning manager and the Geospatial Information Technology Manager. I'm working for Abu Dhabi Urban Planning Council, who is looking after the physical development of the city of Abu Dhabi.
Excellent.
Good afternoon. I'm Rick Fedrizzi, President and CEO of the U.S. Green Building Council, and I'm also the incoming chairman of the World Green Building Council, representing 89 countries around the world.
So what I'd like to do is to ask Rick Fedrizzi, with both the responsibilities of the U.S. Green Building Council and the World Green Building Council, to do an overview for us of the way geospatial infrastructure, data, information make a difference to the built environment, Rick, and give them a sense, both what you've been doing in the United States, but also, if you would, how you see the harmonization of these standards and what you can do with the World Green Building Council.
Sure. Was there a video, Jan, first, or?
Well, if you want to go, we're going to put that at the beginning, I guess. One of the individuals who wanted to be here at our summit, but was unable to make it, but regretted it, and has sent a video, is the mayor of New York, Michael Bloomberg. So what I'd like to do then, Rick, hold off a minute, thank you. And what we'll do is we'll hear from Mayor Bloomberg of New York City on a video.
This is New York City Mayor Mike Bloomberg. It's an honor to address this historic Eye on the Earth Summit. The information revolution is constantly providing more and richer data about our world. And this summit brings leaders and innovators from many nations together to discuss how we can share this wealth of environmental and social information and make the best use of it. Early in my career, I learned that if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. That's true in business as well as in government. Only by regularly measuring and analyzing our efforts can we learn what works, what doesn't, and why, and then act on what the data tells us to do. That's been a hallmark of our pioneering work to make New York a greener, greater city. Work we rigorously measure in annual progress reports, greenhouse gas inventories, and through other indicators. In 2007, we released Plan YC, our green print for sustainable growth. We've made significant progress towards making it a reality. We set a target of reducing our greenhouse gas emissions 30% by 2030, and today we're almost halfway to that goal. We've also enacted ambitious laws to make the city's existing buildings, the source of 75% of our carbon emissions, more energy efficient. And in keeping with the spirit of Plan YC, the centerpiece of these laws, which will shrink our carbon footprint by 5%, is the requirement that large buildings annually benchmark and publicly disclose their energy use. As chair of the C40 Cities Climate Leadership Group, I'm also a strong believer that cities benefit by sharing best information and best practices. That's why C40 has recently completed studies that, for the first time, systematically measure the carbon footprint of C40 cities, and also catalog what we've done and can do to shrink them. And the work of this Eye on the Earth Summit will help cities around the world address the challenges of a growing global population and changing climate. That couldn't be more urgent. For the first time in history, cities are home to more than half the world's population, and together the cities of the Earth account for some 70% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions. As our planet's population grows, so will the demands placed on our cities, as well as the potential impacts that cities have on the environment. But this growth is also an opportunity to develop renewable energy, enhance public health, and improve the quality of life in an increasingly urbanized world. Cities have much to learn from one another, and that includes the cities of New York and the host of the Eye on the Earth Summit, Abu Dhabi. While our cities are very different, we also have much in common, and it's not just that we each have a campus of NYU. Abu Dhabi's Vision 2030, a plan for urban sustainability and economic growth, addresses many of the same important issues as we have in New York City, and it's taking a data-driven approach to creating a better future. So I salute Abu Dhabi and the other hosts of this global gathering, and I wish you all a very successful summit.
And now let me call on Rick Fedrizzi to talk about the enormous amount of work that he's been doing to lead the built environment, the number of councils and the number of people he's been working with. Rick Fedrizzi.
Good afternoon, everyone. I have a very short period of time to get through a number of slides, so I'm going to do it quickly. I'm trying to set the stage for the information related to green buildings that I think everyone understands is an important debate today. My colleagues that just traveled to Africa, to Durban, to the climate talks have come back saying for the very first time the world is taking the idea that green buildings can be a solution to some of the most important problems we have facing us. Clearly, the world's population is growing. We all know that that is something that is not going to slow down anytime soon. 50% of the world's population lives in cities. 2% of that is what occupies the actual space of the Earth. And yet 2/3 of all energy use is in those areas, along with 2/3 of the associated carbon with that. 80% of the world's resources are used, again, with a 2% footprint of the people in those cities and more than 1 billion tons of waste annually. Buildings offer the single largest opportunity for us to address this. There's so many issues that we see every single day, large-scale conversations about what we can do and what we should do. Ultimately, every one of us live in homes, work in buildings, shop in stores, send our children to schools, look at every building type. We have the opportunity to fix this, but only if the buildings perform. This is not a story of just buildings that are beautiful and don't perform. Other than if they don't perform, buildings become just sculpture. What we need are buildings that look beautiful, enhance our communities, and perform. The green building revolution of the last few years, right now, according to the U.S. Green Building Council and many of the countries around the world, is really focused on a retrofit revolution. We need to start understanding where in the beginning, the green and the orange areas that are driving the market to the highest level of potential is now focused on this very large blue part of the bell curve there, the existing building market. These slides were given to me by a friend named Ed Mazria, who runs Architecture 2030 in the United States, and it's really compelling. This chart is focused on United States consumption, but shows approximately 70 quads of energy use by the year 2050. 2050. Those are quadrillion BTUs. We have been, going back one, we have spent the last 10 years focused on reducing that demand by the year 2050, with the blue area there, which is renewable energy, and the orange area, which is nuclear, which after the tsunamis in Japan has changed dramatically. But what we haven't focused on until now is the idea that through energy efficiency practices in our existing building stock in the United States, and I would argue that these slides are also applicable to cities around the world, that we have the opportunity to do some really dramatic changes. Right now in the United States, that kind of reduction in energy can put 23% energy reduction on the table, $1.2 trillion in savings. And with all of the problems the U.S. government has right now relative to our finances, the fact that we're wasting $1.2 trillion is inexcusable. 1.1 gigaton reduction of carbon and 900,000 new jobs created just because we choose to green our buildings. The U.S. Green Building Council has taken a very active role in the past 20 years, and we've developed a process and a system by which we can approach market transformation, primarily through our rating system called LEED. Now, you heard earlier about the rating system here, Estadama, and the Pearl system, a wonderful program that is helping to transform this market. LEED is primarily used in the United States, and about 40% of our LEED certifications are outside the United States. But if you look at the opportunity to build green, save energy, save money, create jobs, improve infrastructure, there's this wonderful cyclical opportunity in front of us. The U.S. Green Building Council now has 17,000 corporate and organizational members in 89 chapters around the United States. We have 60% of our LEED certifications inside the U.S., 40% outside. And when we start looking at the growth, where China, the emerging nations are growing in the years ahead, and looking by 2020 for the emerging nations to basically double what China is doing right now, we know that the way that we view rating systems in the U.S. and outside the U.S. is going to be critical to our success in everything that we're trying to do. LEED is our rating system developed by the U.S. Green Building Council, and it's a wonderful system of looking at the opportunities related to energy and water and waste and materials and air quality and site issues and innovation. And when you start looking at a building that way, that's a really terrific opportunity. When you start looking at a city that way, it's an even better opportunity. The Green Building Council plaque, people have said to me, what is LEED? I don't understand what, and I'm sure my colleague gets the same question with the Pearl and the Estadama system. What is it? I love to show this very simple box of cookies. And I love to show the side. It has information that says how much fat or protein or carbohydrates or sodium is in that box. And as a consumer, you can choose to buy that based on your health, based on whatever values you may have. You may choose to buy it or not. But in most buildings that we've looked at in the past, we had no idea what is going on in those buildings until rating systems like LEED, like the Pearl system, systems that help enhance our ability to make better decisions. We have 125,000 LEED registered and certified buildings around the world right now. 8.7 billion square feet, and we are certifying now, this is an old slide, 1.8 million square feet every single day. That is how much people are starting to understand the value of the LEED rating system in the U.S., and most of our certifications today are for existing buildings. We also have 175,000 LEED accredited professionals. We call them LEED APs. These are people that have taken the time to invest in themselves in the training and understand the system and how it is applied to their jobs. In the World Green Building Council, we talk about voluntary certification programs. All around the world, there's a number of good rating systems, and what we try to do is encourage the growth of those rating systems, whether they be the BREEAM system in the UK or the Green Star system in Australia and South Africa, CASB in Japan, Pearl and Estadama here. There's a number of systems, and they are all good because they help people transform the way that they think. Right now, there are 89 countries that are in the process of developing green building councils, and ultimately, I think that there's a tremendous opportunity for all of us to even grow and learn further, grow together and learn together in the years ahead. In 2007, there were 26 green building councils. Now, there's 89. In the Middle East and North Africa region, there's 13 right now. The Emirates Green Building Council, one of the oldest and most established, and others joining right behind. The U.S. Green Building Council has also created the LEED International Roundtable. 27 countries right now have come together to be able to understand how building a building in, say, the Middle East may be different than building a building in New York, and ultimately being able to select alternative compliance paths, individual credits that make it much easier and more effective to do buildings here than it would be to try to do a New York building here in this location. But again, we know you can't manage what you can't measure. So we've created the Building Performance Partnership, where now all LEED buildings are going to be given a report card. People are going to understand how the energy is used and what was done in that space. They're going to get energy performance metrics that allow them to understand where they're doing, what their neighbors are doing, and how they can do more. The same thing on water will enhance the way they do business. We're also developing a program right now. It's available. Anyone with an iPad or an iPod today can get a free application called GBIG. And GBIG is a way of understanding how, when you look at a particular building in a certain city, it can give you information that today you don't have. That information is critical to the ability for you to lease the proper space, to purchase the proper space. It's financing decisions, insurance decisions, if it's an idea of sending your child to school, all of the ways you select a building or real estate property can be given to you in a particular way. Most of it right now, if you look at the ideas of planning, strategy, modeling, all of the things surrounding a proper decision are mind-boggling. Most humans don't have enough time or resources to make that happen. So what we've done is we put it in a way that people can understand, and that's through the new and emerging world of apps. Applications that will be applicable to the kind of things and the kind of decision-making we want to make. So you can take your cell phone today with the GBIG app. You can walk around in the United States, and eventually we will map every city in the world. But in the United States today, every city, the leaves that pop up there are essentially green buildings, LEED-rated buildings that have been certified. You'll be able to open up and expand that map and see the actual projects and what information is there. You'll be able to take it a step further and be able to look at the actual, in this particular case, the Chicago Center for Green Technology, and the fact that it achieved a LEED Platinum. You'll be able to then look at, this is the more expanded map with the dots. You'll select the dots. The dots will tell you that we achieved so many points in energy, water, materials, and so forth. You then have the ability to further select information that will compare your project against other projects in that neighborhood, your project against the national average, New York against California, a lot of different ways of applying that. And then looking at individual credits for energy and atmosphere and water use and all of the LEED criteria that would allow you to make the proper decisions. That is the way that the world is moving. We believe that all things are connected and no one thing can change by itself. A lesson that Paul Hawken taught us a long time ago. When we start to understand this, we know for the first time that these boxes that we work with every day are not just boxes. They're where people live, work, and play. So when we start thinking about the people and we start looking at what opportunities exist in front of us, we start to learn that we have a very small and very effective world that we can do a lot with information to advance. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rick. And our next speaker is from EoE, which is an organization of 1,200 cities around the world that focuses on sustainability. And I'd like to call on Suzanne Saltz to make a presentation and to talk to her about what she sees in terms of cities and resilience.
Thanks, Jan. Sure, I don't have any slides, but I think that's actually not so bad since time is passing fast, so I'll try to be brief and yet say some interesting things. We've heard a lot already in this conference about data, about what we need to learn from this data and the decisions we have to make and the changes we have to make. We have heard also a lot about cities. I was very happy to hear President Clinton mention cities. We heard this morning a number of things, for example, from UNISDR about making cities resilient. We heard one particular city example just now. We heard buildings, which are part of the built environment, which are cities. And ICLEI indeed is 1,200 cities globally working together towards sustainability. Originally, when we were founded back in 1990, we focused a lot on climate change. And we still do. We've just released the first annual report of Carbon and the Mexico City Pact, which about a year ago, a few dozen mayors from around the world signed a declaration to say they will reduce emissions. And now we released a report where 51 cities from all over the world, ranging from small cities to very, very large cities like Mexico City, report exactly how much they've been able to do in 1 year. This was launched at COP, where the countries have shown what they are and maybe are not yet doing. And we see that some of these global trends, including climate change, while we try to address them based on the data that we have, however, aren't going the way they need to be going for a sustainable future. So what that has meant for ICLEI and for our member cities is that we decided we also need to look at resilience, because cities are being affected by disasters, environmental disasters, social crises, economic crises. There's numerous examples of these for the globe, for countries, and indeed for cities. And local governments are often having to respond to these. So back in 2002, after the Johannesburg Summit on Sustainable Development, ICLEI, together with a number of others like UNDP and UN Habitat, first started talking about resilient cities. And then last year in 2010, we, for the first time, had the Resilient Cities Congress in Bonn, which is in Bonn in Germany, which is the forum for all the different relevant actors to come together and talk about resiliency. What does resiliency really mean? It means that when a city is hit by any kind of disaster, earthquake, big social unrest, tsunamis, you name it, we've seen it, you know, it needs to bounce back. If you imagine a little feather metal thing you can press together, it needs to bounce back, at least to the original state. But really what we now think is it needs to be even better, so that we learn from this and we come out better on the other side, so that urban planning and design can be done in a way to do that. So for example, if you think of green spaces in cities, parks and such, they are actually very useful for a number of different things. They're recreational areas, you know, on a Sunday afternoon we all like to go to those kinds of places rather than big intersections. They're useful for urban biodiversity, for urban agriculture. They're useful as rooms to deal with flooding. They help with climate change, and they help to improve the resilience of a city overall. So at our Resilient Cities World Congress, this is just one example of the many types of issues that are discussed by all the different relevant actors. We then focus on particular issues. We would like to focus very much on resilient buildings next year. We do focus on resilient logistics, because we see that if supply chains are in fact interrupted, then water and food can no longer be delivered, which is of course crucial. So how can we ensure that those services are run in a resilient way? We're working with partners on that, for example, DHL. We are also looking at risk management, because we do know that some disasters are going to continue to occur. So how do we, based on the data we have, manage those risks? So some big insurance companies are working with us on that. And many more such things. So one of my key messages here today is, if you're interested in these kinds of topics, and maybe particularly the linkages to data, we would love to see you in Bonn at Resilient Cities 2012, which is going to be held from the 13th to the 15th of May. And where indeed we see this as the platform for all topics to be discussed which matter to all the different relevant organizations and people. So there's a call for contributions out on what should be discussed, which is open until the end of December. So if you have any ideas, we'll be very happy to hear from you. And I think I'll leave it there for now.
Thank you very much, Suzanne. And I'll just say that her organization, ICLEI, has been one of the first in the world to focus on the concept of resilience. And we appreciate her work and the organization's work in the 1,200 cities around the world, because we do want to carry that message to Rio. So next, Aspazia, yesterday you were talking to us about geospatial data and infrastructure and how it could be used in a general sense. Now I'd like to ask you to talk to our group, particularly as you've seen in the different jobs you've had in Brazil, how you see the resiliency agenda affecting the Rio de Janeiro Rio Plus 20 summit.
Well, I think this meeting is very important because it tries to put together two things that are very important: innovation and sustainability. And I would say that innovation requires that we can use for sustainable cities the last technology available and the best one, and in such a way that we can combine the multiple variables that interfere in the life of cities. And this kind of thing requires planning, thing that was a little bit forgotten in the tradition of our developing countries. A new kind of planning is, of course, strategic planning. And we have to have master plans, and we have to have zoning and indicators, as we have seen for Abu Dhabi. And all the cities need to have these things, and it's lots of work to have these indicators and to have all these data available. But I also think that we have to think on something that's crucial. Cities were invented to destroy nature. And now we are in the 20th century, and we have to change completely this relationship. And we have to try to be friendly with one another. And this requires resilience. And what does that mean? President Clinton told us about the example of New Orleans. I could talk about the examples of the 5 cities which were destroyed last January by terrible floods, and that were just victims of absence of resilience, because the ecosystems have been destroyed, and the water which came from the mountains destroyed everything at a speed of 120 kilometers an hour. So this kind of thing is because nature was damaged. The rivers in the cities, we don't know their names, and we have to reinvent them. We have to liberate them. In the United States, they are doing this, the naturalization of the rivers, and also to remake infrastructure in order to adapt them to climate change. I think that one very important problem that has to do with the clay is that we have a commitment in Rio Plus 20, which is empower the cities. The cities are very weak, but they are very important for sustainability, and of course, they have always been very important for innovation. And what does that mean? That we have to have an indication in Rio Plus 20 that they are going to be heard, that the voices of the cities will be part of the global governance. They are not. And this is very important because resilience, because accidents, these tragic accidents, they occur in the local geographic basis. So once more, we have to be able to have all the data in order to avoid these accidents, but also to react to them when it's necessary. And resilience is something that is fantastic because it indicates that service that nature gives to men are zero costs. They are just free. And we have to consider this and take it into account and preserve more and more physical areas in the cities, and also to give them sustainable use. Because when we leave huge spaces completely abandoned, it's not enough. We have to use it for tourism, for recreation, for all kinds of use. And this is the way we have now, thinking of sustainable development, to preserve really something that is valuable and important for our survival. Another point I would like to stress here is that resilience, which is a term which comes from physics and from psychology, but which is very useful also for social sustainability, is something that implies, first of all, the capacity of response in a dangerous situation or in a challenging situation. And so we have to have a very good amount of information on the environment around, including the social and the economic, in order to interfere in such a way that we can really have good results. I would like to say that these cities, which were very well damaged by the floods of last year, had not any kind of data available. And that was voluntary work from the universities, which were able to, a little bit in very, very difficult situation, to offer these informations. And of course, we have to do much more than we have had at that time. Rio de Janeiro now has a big center of operations against accidents and disasters. And this is very up-to-date technology. The mayor may talk to people at any time. If you have a flood at night, for instance, he'll be online with all the staff to talk about this and to take decisions. And this is really very interesting. IBM has offered them some kind of material to control, software to control the meteorological conditions in order to prevent them 24 hours before and avoid the tragic deaths and homeless people who stay abandoned when this kind of thing occur in the city. And in thinking of this, of social resilience, I would say that one of the biggest problems of cities is that they don't have any kind of participation, and people don't talk to each other. So networks in small neighborhoods or in different parts of the city are indispensable to make these kinds of data, geographic and spatial information able to help people and to create commitment with the city and with the future of the city. I think that the last point I would like to talk to you is the most crucial for Rio Plus 20, which is the problem of economic sustainability. You have so well showed us the importance of the green buildings. I would tell you that green buildings, sewage, treatment of sewage, renewable energy, and mass transportation together, they may remake our infrastructures. And this is sustainability, this is innovation. This kind of thing may correspond to a large amount of money, but also a large amount of investments. And since we are in such a difficult crisis, financial crisis as we are now, these 4 or 5 things together may give us a new paths of development and, of course, new possibilities of sustainable cities. Thank you very much.
I think this pretty indicates how the geospatial data and gathering plays into the vanguard for a green economy, as Rick has indicated. It plays into the whole global resiliency theme that's taken off because of groups like EoE. And I appreciate the role that Rio is going to play and the leadership that it will play. I would like to end on the note we began. Abu Dhabi's taken great leadership. Ms. Al-Zanouri, I would like to ask you to respond a bit to how you see the future as it rolls out with geospatial data being used in the broader context of social, economic change and opportunities.
I think this geospatial information could give a good base of making decision. It will help decision makers to see something tangible and compare different scenarios to take informed decision of their future, how the city will grow, and how we want really to plan not only for the current generation. We need to think about the future generation. The future generation, to plan for them better, we need really to utilize the resources. Geospatial information, what's the beautiful part of it, it has a lot of possibility of giving the different scenario and visualizing those information to help decision makers to make a better decision for the future. For example, I give you one good example of how we thought about the traffic counts. Abu Dhabi has, or the Emirate, it has a really high carbon emission footprint, and we are thinking seriously how to improve that. If we think about how we can use the geospatial information available to enhance that and to step ahead of taking a serious decision about it, I think the traffic count that we have, it's locational based, and we can really introduce a good analysis for that to show the decision makers to introduce public, for example, public transportation, encourage people for walkable streets, redesigning the street in a way that helps people to be more flexible to walk or use the public transportation instead of just using their own cars. That's very obvious in Abu Dhabi as a serious problem. That's what UPC, through the citizens and geospatial information, trying to have alternative plan and guiding the decision maker to how we can make things happen. Another example, accessibility for community facilities. Why we have that much of traffic, which definitely has a big link to the pollution of the air. That's the accessibility problems that we need really to focus on and find solutions to make all the community facility easy accessible for the community. I think those are a couple of examples, and there are many that we thought about, particularly from urban planning perspective, how we can really help utilizing the geospatial information we have to better decision making.
Well, Suzanne, I'd like to ask you one thing in terms of giving us, since you at EoE have almost begun this whole endeavor really with resilience, tell me how you think that will play out at Rio+20. What's your vision of where you would like to see the resiliency agenda be at the conclusion of that summit, which we're moving toward here?
I think Rio+20 is very much about not thinking in silos. So it's very much about linking resilience with all the other issues that we talk about with cities. For cities, it's certainly urban planning overall. On a global level, climate change is very important, biodiversity is very important, desertification and food security, and so on. So all these different issues are interconnected, and Rio+20 hopefully realizes that and must find integrated solutions. And indeed, Rio and Brazil are playing a great leadership role on that. And we do think that cities can play and are playing a very important role as well. And the UN, in fact, does have structures to link up to cities, and EoE is responsible for linking all local governments worldwide to the Rio+20 process. And so cities will be very visible and will be working with the UN and the global actors to move to a more sustainable future where we will need resilience, but hopefully where we also minimize the difficulties that we will face and create a more sustainable future for all of us.
Well, we've got 2 minutes left. I'd like to divide the time between Rick and Aspasia to ask them this question. This is an historic summit. All of us have been to many conferences around the world, but Rick and Aspasia, I'd like to have you give like the 1 minute version of whether you think that of the significance of this summit and the potential of having this as a recurring opportunity for building a new tradition. Aspasia, would you like to start us?
Well, I think that sustainable development has been a dream in 1902, but in 2012, it must be a reality. So we go from the moment to the movement, and I hope that Rio+20 will be a great movement of innovation, sustainable cities, green buildings, and all these things that we dream of and that are real now and are possible. You told me that a green building now, the cost is the same as an old one. So we have to make this effort to go ahead and to look for new kinds of tools and instruments to make sustainable development real. And the second thing is that sustainable development is not environment What we need is instruments. Information is the first one, but we also need governance. If you don't have these two things, economy will not be friendly with the environment. And that's what we want. We want the finance ministers with us. We want the big economic leaders with us, financial leaders, because if the money is there for nothing, we don't know, speculating, why not think of a kind of going down and thinking of production, of jobs, of entrepreneurship. And we have had Hernando Soto yesterday. It was very important what he said to us. There are millions of poor that want to be entrepreneurs, that want to work and need jobs. And this is the objective that developing countries have been pursuing since Stockholm in '72. And Rio Plus 20 is the possibility of a step ahead in this direction.
I think those are brilliant insights, and I appreciate it. Rick, just to summarize where you see the significance in general of the work you've done in this particular Eye on Earth Summit, how do you see the significance of this in the future?
To talk just briefly about this summit, I've experienced this in the last few days like many of you, and many people have come up to me, and in the conversations we get around to the fact everybody's saying almost the same thing. This is a collection of very high-level thought leaders. This is an opportunity for us to look at a conference like this. This is the infancy stage, the beginning of it, but think of where the Davos World Economic Forum Summit came from, and how that has transitioned into one of the most predominant organizational meetings on the planet that bring the highest level thinkers together to talk about economics and opportunity. And I like to think that 3 to 5 years from now, that the Eye on the Earth Summit will actually have that same kind of awareness in people's minds, that the most relevant and important issues of the day are brought together in a consistent manner to help people and empower people. As President Clinton said yesterday, it's not just about information for the sake of information. It's about information for the sake of action and doing something. And in doing something, we're able to begin the process and make the changes that we so desperately want to make. And my closing point, Jan, I have to make, we're talking about data, we're talking about resiliency, we're talking about a million different really important issues. But I don't want to forget the most important part of that entire process is the human being that will in fact take that information and that data and the directives on resiliency and bring that together in an agenda of action. That human being will make all the difference. And I'll give you a case study. After Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans in the United States, the U.S. Green Building Council wanted to do something. Everybody felt powerless. It was about, do we write a check? Do we send food? What can we do? What we decided to do was to hire a young lady named Anissa Baldwin-Metzger. This young lady lived in New Orleans within 3 weeks of the disaster. And her job was to do one thing, and that is to ensure that any school that was rebuilt with integrity, that it would be healthy and a healthy and productive place for children to learn and for teachers to do their jobs. And in a very short period of time, within 3 years, Anissa Baldwin-Metzger has been able to build out 17 LEED-rated schools with another 36 in the pipeline for development. One of the highest and most successful stories in the United States of any city, let alone a city that was ravaged by such a horrible event. So again, a person can make a difference, and the more information, technology, ideas that we can bring forward when we all leave here back to our organizations, back to our employees, back to our families, empower them to do good work, we begin the change that we're all desperately looking for.
Well, I thought you would enjoy this panel. I appreciate the incredible attention you paid. And I would just like to end with Her Excellency Razan Al Mubarak, the visionary leadership she has shown to pull this together, an historic summit, an opportunity to go out together and change the world. And I'm proud and happy to have had this panel discussion with you. Thank you very much.